Alright, so my final major project pitch. It is Leave Me Alone. For this project, I will be producing a short film titled Leave Me Alone, as I said. It is about a young man who begins to see this sort of mysterious entity follow him, and he's the only one who can see it, so he starts to, of course, it affects his mental health because of that, because nobody else can see it. So when he's telling people, here you go, look at that thing, no one believes him. So he's questioning whether it's real, whether it's fake, is he seeing, is he not seeing? So it sort of delves into his soul psyche, while at the same time there's also a supernatural, interdimensional creature that we know nothing about. So this film, it isn't actually my idea. It came from a friend of mine who wrote the script, called Ethan. He had the idea for a few years, tried to get it made before COVID. Then the lockdowns happened, so couldn't go anywhere with film production because of the regulations at the time. Then whenever I started this course, the level 3 course, we were told to do a final major. I knew right away I wanted to do film. I wanted to make a film. So the stars sort of aligned where he'd mentioned the idea, I'd mentioned the course, and met up in Cafe Nero to discuss it. There was a pitch, said I'd think about it if he produced a script. He produced a script, I liked it, went through a couple of drafts, and now here we are actually producing the thing. Decided on it, so
good.
Yeah, so that's how Leave Me Alone came to be about. So according to Ethan, there were 3 main inspirations for this film. That was the Ju-on films, primarily The Grudge, Under the Skin, and Hereditary. Now, I'd seen the American Grudge films before I went into this, but I hadn't seen the Japanese ones, which were what influenced it, so I had to go and track them down and watch it. Hadn't seen Under the Skin before, but Hereditary I'd seen, so we were completely covered. So Ju-on the Grudge, it's a Japanese horror film created by Takashi Shimizu, wrote and directed that film. Third installment of the Ju-on franchise. This is The Grudge, so that's the film, that's the primary film that influenced it. It wasn't the franchise, it was mainly this film. It was the first to be released theatrically, the first to were direct-to-video. Film came out October 18th, 2002, whereas I think the other ones have been like 2000. So, yeah. The premise is that if a building has endured a single horror, it absorbs it and, you know, returns to those who visit. So basically, if someone has died in a house, their spirit's going to linger there. You enter that house, spirit's going to go for you. So it's sort of just real sort of dark magic, you know, stuff. Yeah, it's satisfying jolt with a shower scene.
It's like a Hitchcock kind of thing,
Yeah, Hitchcock would have admired, so that's obviously a reference to Psycho there. Yeah. You know, unconnected vignettes, all pulled together by police investigating the street joints. And it's basically a bunch of different things have happened everywhere. Police are going to these different places, and because they're going to each and every one of these, all of the horror and all of the darkness connected to these places are merging in the police. So it's not just one horror threat they have to deal with, there's multiple. Yeah. It has a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Under the Skin, 2013 science fiction film directed by Jonathan Glazer, starring Scarlett Johansson. It is loosely based on a 2000 novel by Michael Faber. Premise focuses on this extraterrestrial who's come to Earth, specifically Scotland, who takes on the form of a human woman and sort of seduces different men into her grasp, and then lures them to a location where they end up getting pulled into a different dimension and are never seen again. So yeah, film, it holds a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb. And Hereditary, final bit of main inspiration here.
Go ahead.
It's a 2018 American psychological horror, so that's where the psychological comes from.
There's a little bit of a comedy as well. Go ahead.
Under the Skin.
I know that one.
Hereditary?
It's a bit with the daughter.
Right. Yeah,
Go on ahead, go on, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, so this was directed by Ari Aster in his directorial debut. He went on to then direct Midsummer a year later. So he's sort of very into that sort of psychological. And Midsummer is also another minor influence on this film with the whole cult stuff, because there's also a cult that follows this creature that's being stalked by Connor, so that's sort of a different story element that we play into. So this one follows members of a family haunted by a mysterious presence after the death of their sort of secluse grandmother. So she had been sort of, you know, she had these demons they didn't know about, that she tried to protect her family from. She dies and they pass on to them. So yeah, and then, you know, they're grief stricken, but soon the horror starts. They get haunted and everything begins to come to light. This one holds a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. So these films are all sort of in the good to, you know, they're in a good range on IMDb. So we'd like to at least sort of get that mark with this film. We'd like to sort of get it over 6, you know, if we're sitting at 7 out of 10 on any sort of rating systems we get for the film, we'll be happy.
Okay.
You know, that's what we're aiming for, you know. So resources I need for my project, in order to finish it properly, I will need the Panasonic 50xi zoom camera that the college has, as well as a DSLR camera, because I'd like to do some multicam stuff, you know. Again, the Manfrotto tripod and the Rode microphone, which goes on these microphones. Adobe Creative Cloud, primarily Premiere Pro and Rush, so then I can also not graphic design, so that I can edit, but again, I'd also like graphic design software as well to maybe design a logo or design a poster, if I want to tie that in, just for a bit of, you know, boost, a bit of extra, you know, just to show that there's more going on. Of course, help from classmates and hired help. You know, we did, I did sort of go outside the college in order to hire primarily actors, but also locations as well.
Although you also did audition some of the college students, but they didn't really they weren't really suitable, were they?
No, they weren't what we were looking for in this case. Yeah. So yeah, of course, a lot of planning and research. Of course, research into how horror films are made. So that would be the different sort of what elements use the codes and conventions of a horror film that are used. You know, camera angles, editing techniques, all that, you know, what locations are good for natural horror, you know, how can you make something creepy? For example, we have an abandoned house, which I called the council and asked if it was owned, and it was not. It was no longer owned under any sort of property. So I was legally able to just go in and film. You know, and if police had come, I could just say, yeah, we're just making a movie here. You know, and we, of course, because it was abandoned, of course, it had decay. You know, it had rot over it because it had been abandoned for a while. We did do risk assessments before going in.
But the on the rot, that's kind of like thematically significant, considering the kind of the nature, the narrative of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also played into that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made sure to capture the rot around the area in
good.
In order to
the cutaways
physically display that this was his mind.
Yeah, I see what you've done there.
Because at the start of the film, he's in a nice house. It's quite homely, built up. It's nice. Then by the end, he ends up in this abandoned house, trying to hide away from everything.
Okay, I see. That's good. I see what you've done there. That's good.
Yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but we'll move on. And then a decent, reliable schedule that's stuck to. Of course, that would be sort of writing down, you know, what days we're going to shoot, what we're going to shoot on those days. The shot lists, of course, would be needed in there. And yeah, you know, different, just scheduling, you know, making sure it lines up with everybody who's needed that day. Shot list, make sure we can capture them shots, taking into account time of day. Does the script say this is during the day? Okay, we'll try and shoot that in the day. Script says at night. Okay, we'll come and shoot this after dark. Yada yada yada. So yeah, so cameras, tripod, microphone, and the college computers are all stuff I'm able to source from here. So that's very useful for me. And then the planning, production research. It's going to be documented on my website as well. So yeah, we'll be documenting that, and yeah. So the help from the classmates and the hired help, back to that. You know, we had actors from outside the college, so we were able to hire them. You know, they had to go unpaid, sadly, but they were kind enough to still come out and help us when they were free, when they were available. Yeah, you know, and we sort of made documentation that they were there. We had photographs of them on the set and all that. So yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we did, yeah. Alright, so the job roles in the project. So director, that's me. I was so in charge of production, calling the shots, the boss, you know, making sure that everything is going just fine, making sure that nobody isn't doing anything they're supposed to, making sure everybody's doing everything they are supposed to, and making sure that the film gets made, whatever's being shot that day, make sure it gets shot. You know, whoever needs to be there that day, make sure they're there. That's what the director does. So, yeah. Actors, they're the ones who perform in front of the camera. Again, I also had to step into that role because the script is actually a pretty decent length. So because of that, it was kind of, and shooting's about 12 days long. So it was kind of
quite a bit,
yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a bit difficult to kind of get someone to come in unpaid with no budget behind it. So I decided that I would step into the main protagonist role because I've done wee bits of acting here and there, so I thought this would maybe be a good step for me to try and again, it's more rounded within that industry as well. You know, I've got experience behind the camera directing, and then I've got experience in front of the camera as well.
And your confidence that way has really been coming out there in the last year and a half done, so.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so, exactly. See, like, you wouldn't ask, as a director, you wouldn't ask actors to do something that you wouldn't do. 100%. So that's why, of course, I was fine enough to just step in front of the camera and act in the main character role, as well as also, so I was in front of the camera as well. I had to perform as well. I had to remember lines as well, but then I was also telling them that they also had to remember the lines and that they had to perform, because I was also doing the same.
Yeah, but you're leading by example is what you do.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to do anyway. Yeah, so I also used Peter Malone from this class. He also played a part of the main character's best friend. And that basically just came about from, we were looking for different actors. We'd auditioned different people. We didn't have quite enough, as much candidates as we'd like to have had. So what we did is then I sort of extended the offer out to the class, whoever wanted it. A couple came forward, they read for me. I sent the video off to the writer because we sort of picked ourselves. Because it was his vision, I wanted him to be involved in the casting because he'd be able to put faces to the names better as he wrote it, so he would have been picturing what they would have looked like and all that there. So then eventually he liked Peter's audition. I was fine, I was happy enough with it, I thought it was good. So I picked Peter, he kindly came and helped, yeah, there we go. We also hired an actress called Katie McErlane, who's currently going on to be a finalist in Miss Northern Ireland.
Alright.
2022, yeah, so that was quite, yeah, she's also done professional stuff as well. She has an agent. She's told not to do unpaid work, but she'd seen our casting call and the film had actually really intrigued her, so she was happy enough to go against her agency and just say, you know what, I want to go and do that.
She'll obviously get a copy of the film or whatever as well.
Yeah, everybody's been promised a copy of the film to put in show reels and all that for once I've fully edited it. I would never not let them have it, you know what I mean? Because it's evidence for them to go into their work, helps them along in the future.
Well, hand washes the hour.
Exactly, yeah. It's like they've helped me by providing a role in my part so that I could shoot the scenes. So of course, I'd be happy enough to provide them with a finished copy of the film. so that then they could, of course, use that as evidence for future work. For example, if they're going to be in another horror film, which may be even bigger than ours, and they're like, do you have any experience in horror? Yep, here it is. Before you know it, they could be in the next Friday the 13th film.
Could be. That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So she played the role of Hannah, and yeah, we really liked her. She came into our audition process quite late, because we'd already auditioned a few actresses. We were closing in on one that we liked. She then got to us and was like, could I still audition? We were like, yeah. We were a few days before deciding to finally close it, so we were like, we'll give you a shot if you can audition this week. She did, showed up, stole it, just completely took it.
Okay, good. Yeah, so just as a start. Okay, that's right.
Yeah, and we were really impressed with our audition, and we really enjoyed working with her. She was very great.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we also had 3 older actors, which I managed to get the use of an actor called Barry Sinclair, just by putting out a casting call for older people. He plays the role of Connor's father in the film, James McDowell, you call that character. So yeah, we managed to find him in a Facebook group. Thankfully, he came and read for us. He was the only actor to do so, but he wasn't terrible. He was a good actor.
Okay.
So of course he was a good actor. So because if he wasn't a good actor, I still would have rather looked for more people.
Yeah, 100%.
But because he was the only one, and I did like him, I thought, yeah, I'm happy enough to have him in the film. Happy enough to have him in the film. So yes, and then 2 other actors. There was an actress called Emma Stone. Funny enough.
Oh, okay.
We can't actually use her name.
Oh, that's because of equity.
So there's a stage name that we have to use for her, and that's Patricia Elwood. She plays the mother character. We found her through a theatre group. Basically, my mum has a friend who runs a theatre company, so they're always hiring in older actors as well, because they work with actors mostly of all ages. So we managed. I reached out to him when we were struggling for the search of older actors. We're like, do you have any that you could send our way that would be interested? He did, and thankfully we cast the characters of Karen, the mother, and the cult leader, Joanne, through that.
Okay, that's grand. Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Yeah, and Joanne was basically the same process as Karen. So let's move on from actors because I'm a bit much there.
That's right. Don't worry, you're passionate. That's fine.
Camera operator. So that's just someone who's behind the camera. For that, I've just sort of sourced out with people from the class because they are familiar with the equipment that we were using. So I thought that would be easiest. You know, I had Luke on camera, I had Joshua using the camera, I had Josie using the camera, I had Jay using the camera, I had Jason using the camera. I use all different. And I even taught the writer, Ethan, how to use it.
Yeah. Well, 12-day shoot, you probably would need to do it.
Yeah, and I also taught my friend Adam how to use the camera, and they also shot some wee bits for us. So yeah, so they would be, you know, monitoring the filming, so sort of seeing how the shot looks, does it look good, and then, you know, after we've shot a scene, they'll look back, is there any mistakes, any inconsistencies, something looks off, you know, so I would be expecting, of course I would look over it myself for a second opinion, but I'd be expecting them to sort of tell me what they think, get their opinion on how the shot looked, before then I would also make my own decision on how that shot looked, and then yeah, so just be capturing the footage. That's it. So this one's kind of unique to this film, and that's the puppeteer, because we built a puppet for this film. It's about 7 foot tall.
All right. Okay.
It's made out of just a broomstick, coat hanger for shoulders, mannequin head, black bed sheet over it, taped it up, painted it to look a bit gnarly, tore at it, made it dirty. And yep, but we can't just have it sort of being sitting idle the whole time, just sticking it up and just having it. So we would have someone sort of standing there trying to creatively work them out of the shot.
Yeah. Like a silhouette or something like that.
Yeah, so it would just be sort of standing there, be moving around. So they'd be carrying it, they would be angling it, they'd be raising it, lowering it, just anything to make it look good on camera and to make sure that it's coming out properly and that we can see what it is and what it's doing. And then of course the editor, which again, that falls on me, personally takes all of the uncut raw footage that we have pulled from the camera and We're gonna edit it, transitioning, graphics, for title cards and the credits and stuff, adding in sound, Foley, ADR, whatever the scene needs to make it a bit better, and more just sort of editing to turn it into the final project that we aim to create out of this. So moving on from the job roles, research. So I consulted with the writer regarding the influence. Then I looked into the influences myself. I also looked at other horror films, which, for example, if there's a scene in an abandoned house, we're using an abandoned house. So I would go and look at that. How have they shot that? How's it framed? What's the lighting like in it? And we would try and then, of course, recreate that because it's from a successful horror film. So we'd like to imitate success. So that's what we did. Looking at critically acclaimed short horror films, which would have been available on YouTube, sort of seeing what they did, how they made theirs good, what kind of budget they had, what effects they could have, what we could sort of recreate from them. That's what we would have pulled from them. Horror target audiences. I looked a bit into IMDb, looked at the reviews of known horror films to see what the main age demographics were, looking at those films, to see who was giving it the highest scores, and also to see how much money they made to gauge on how successful they actually were. So yeah, and I actually came up with a pretty decent idea for target audiences for horror that I think is accurate. Looked into social classes such as AB, C1, C2, DE, and then I also looked into the psychologicals. I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but I know that there's the Explorer,
That's okay, I know the stuff you
So I looked at them, and I was trying to look at which one out of these groups would be the
target audience,
the best ones to target a horror film to. So
that's interesting and stuff, isn't it, Dylan?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really interesting going in the minds of people, and just have to hope and pray that it would pay off in this. Locations around me to use. So basically, because we had the film set in Lisburn, we would research into places in Lisburn to see were they public, and then we'd sort of have a look at them on camera to see would they be good for a horror film, can they fit into the story naturally without just being forced in, and so that's what we did. We just sort of had a bit of location scouting around Lisburn and just sort of did all that.
That's fine.
Risk assessed them too to make sure that they were safe to use.
And
and the main house in the film we actually got is actually it's actually the writer's grandparents' house. They kindly let us use it, and they kindly let us destroy one of their rooms.
Oh, there you go. Oh, that's good.
We had stuck newspapers up on the window. We had stuck crazy drawings all over the walls.
So it's kind of schlubby looking.
Yeah, we'd left just stuff everywhere, and I think by the end of it they were getting a bit annoyed at it. But we managed to get full use of the room. We managed to finish everything up in there that we needed, and sometimes we were shooting into that house long into the night, 12 p.m. and because they're older, they want to go to bed, so they got a bit grumpy. But they were really nice to still let us use it. It never really caused too much trouble.
Yeah, that's grand. Okay.
So yeah, creating effective scares. We would look up sort of with a practical prop. How can we use that to be scary? We looked at things such as how to make it look like it's moving unnaturally, such as filming the footage backwards.
Yeah,
so
reverse
example,
motion, yeah.
Yeah, so for example, we'd have it, say it's meant to be walking forward, we'd actually walk it backwards, reverse the footage, so then it looks really weird.
Yeah, it does, yeah. But
Doesn't look normal.
It's so easily done as well.
Yeah,
A wee bit of planning load to get the movement right, but if you get it right, it's
yeah, that's what we did. Yeah, we sort of plotted it out, and I'm pretty happy with it so far.
Okay, that's good.
Pretty happy with it so far. So yeah, again, jump scares, that'll probably be something that will be present. It's a bit of a cliche, but it happens, you know.
It's a horror film,
It's
right?
the reason why it's a
Yeah.
cliche, yeah. And I won't be planning on using just fake outs.
Yeah.
If the jump scare's happening, it's happening for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, he's knocked the plate over.
Yeah, it's not
It's fine.
gratuitous. Yeah, that's fine.
Yep, it's like, if there's a jump scare, it is because the creature's present.
The Brumman's grand.
So yeah, research documentation is going into Word documents and PowerPoints to store them,
Mhm.
but they will all be available on my website once this project is nearing its completed phase.
Okay.
So the target audience. So as I was mentioning before about doing the target audience research, I have came up with sort of who I think the best target audience would be. Of course, horror movie fans.
Mhm.
Anyone who likes horror movies. So I looked on Twitter, and I even went on to Reddit on the
Sorry to hear that, Dylan.
yeah, just to look at horror, like r/horror. You know, that's just what I typed in. You know, just basic r/horror, and it's just a bunch of horror discussions. You know, so I never had to go into any dark parts.
Yeah,
it was all just to do with horror movies.
It's okay, don't worry.
So yeah. Yeah, so yeah, and we'd see different discussions, what people's favourite films were in the horror genre, what horror directors they liked, what horror tropes they liked, the codes and conventions, looking at all of that to try and gauge what horror fans like the most about horror films, why they're horror fans, because we wanted to, of course,
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
you know,
Yeah.
we wanted to, of course, learn what is it that would draw them to this film. Just because they're a horror fan doesn't mean they're going to be a horror fan of this.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to be a fan of this type of horror that we're
Yeah,
going for.
okay.
Yeah. So you know, and you know, I'd love to target it to anyone: males 30 to 40, females 18 to 30. You know, if anybody's a horror fan, I'd love to reach them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just want to focus on one demographic.
Good, you don't want to restrict your audience. Good.
No, absolutely
Good.
not.
Yes,
I
good.
wouldn't just be like, oh, this is exclusively for men aged 30 to 44.
Yeah.
If you're anyone else, get it. No.
Yeah,
I-
totally. You're not going to make less money that way.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
I would want to include whoever I could, and that's why I'm more focused on horror fans in general, rather than just the age group and the demographic of people who may or may not be horror fans. So yeah, my goal is that people enjoy the film, find it somewhat scary, a bit terrifying. You know, I want them to jump, I want them to be on the edge of their seat. I want them to kind of be looking at it going, what's going on here? What is happening here? Uncertain. But at the end of it, I want them to walk away and go, that was a good film.
Okay.
You know, I don't want them to walk away and go, that scared me, but, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't
It's a
enjoy
bit cheap
it.
or nasty or something.
Yeah, I want them to still enjoy it, but at the same time, I was scared of a Jesus out of them as well.
Plays on the mind.
As
Okay,
best
that's
as I
good.
can, yeah,
Okay,
as
that's
best
good.
I can, yeah. So distribution, I'm going to be making it available exclusively on the YouTube channel that I created,
Okay.
which I call DLC Studios because my nickname, it's my initials, DLC.
Mhm.
It's sort of a funny.
That's
way of
good. Yeah,
words,
that's fine.
yeah.
Anyway, okay.
It's just like downloadable content.
Yeah,
I hear
yeah.
that joke all the
Yeah,
time.
that's good. Anyway.
Yeah, because of
My one being TSB.
because it is quite lengthy. It is going to be decently long. I don't think it can fit onto the website with the file limitations that it has, and I don't want to just split it into multiple parts and just here's part one of the film, here's part two. I don't know. It just doesn't sit with me. It doesn't feel like that's how it should be distributed, and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like it would take the audience out if.
But you'd have a link. You'd have a link
Yep,
on the website. Goes
there will
straight
be a
there.
link on the website,
Shall
of
do.
course.
I'd love that.
But it'll just be on the YouTube.
Yeah, that's
but
fine,
of course, there will be a link wherever there can be a link to that video.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Absolutely. So yeah, as I said there, I just don't want to upload it into multiple parts because I feel like it would be messy.
No.
And it
But
would
also
you out
take
the
you out of the film.
That's what I was going to
exactly,
say. Yep. It's like if you're watching part one and it's getting really good.
Atmosphere ruins the atmosphere.
Yeah, and the film ends and you're like, oh, I have to go to part two.
Yeah.
You're pulled out of it.
Exactly. It's like
You're
whenever
pulled
you're
right.
streaming something and it starts buffering, it's like
Yeah, exactly. You have to sit down, watch it from the start all the way to the end. That's how I want that to be
Okay.
viewed. So, yeah. So evaluation. We are, of course, doing the weekly vlogs to track work progress and all that. This here is also technically evaluation because I can look back at this and watch what did I say during this. Am I keeping true to that? make sure. I've also, at the end of my filming days, I recorded short segments on the camera talking about what I'd done that day.
Like a journal, good.
Yeah, sort of like a behind the scenes sort of
good.
thing, talking about what we got done, what I liked about that day, what I thought could have gone better, and that's ultimately it, yeah. I also plan to sort of send out scenes of the film. Basically, if I can't decide on what I want for a scene in the film, I'm going to edit. So for example, say if I want to edit it this way and this way,
So you've options, yeah.
I'm going to edit both,
Yeah.
send them out,
See what works better.
feedback, what do you think looks better, what do you think would fit better,
Like a test screening.
like a test screening but
Yeah.
for a scene, just a singular
That's
scene.
right, that's right.
And whatever one I think is the clear majority, or
It's getting a better reaction.
yeah, whatever's getting better, that's going in the film.
Yeah, 100% good.
That's going in the film. Yeah, and I'll also be sending out rough cut as well. Like I'm gonna edit it just bare bones 1st, which is just cutting the scenes together,
Yeah.
not worrying about audio, not worrying about ADR, just cutting the scenes and then asking, right, what here looks good, what here doesn't look good, and then and then once I have that feedback, then when I take it back in for a second cut, once I am then fine tuning the editing details. That's when then I'll apply feedback that I've got from that rough cut review, and
Just make sure you have all that. Make sure you have all that feedback documented, of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll be grabbing screenshots of messages.
Good.
You know.
Okay.
Yep. So that's it. That's the end of my PowerPoint. That's the end of my pitch.
All right. Shall we give everybody a round of applause here? Thank you, Don. Thank you. That's grand.